How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your monthly horoscope. Talking about November of 2018 for Sagittarius. There we go. Oh, wait, I don't even have the right tab up. Oh, computer, don't freeze on me. Anyway, let's talk about this Sagittarius, because I'm a Sag rising, so I'm experiencing this one with you guys. Let's talk about, on November 6th, Uranus retrogrades back into Aries. Yay! Uranus has been in our 6th house for quite some time now, since the beginning of May, or middle of May, sometime during then. And Uranus is all about liberation, shaking up, going, things are going up and down. And this has been in your 6th house, where we're talking about your work, your routine, your sense of service, your health, things kind of breaking apart. As Uranus retrogrades back into Aries, and it goes back into the 5th house of creation, of love, of music, of children, this is where this part of your life is going to get a little bit more spiced up again, as it was for the past 7 years. And you start to, Uranus is very much a liberator. He's very much a wild card. You can't really count on him, but you can definitely, you can definitely know when, you know that he's definitely going to bring something out of nowhere and unexpected. So as Uranus comes back into your 5th house, there's a lot of unexpected stuff happening. A lot of stuff is going to be brought up again that you guys have been experiencing for the past 7 years, but around the theme of, this is also an Aries, this is a Mars ruled sign of doing, of acting, of kind of going for things, and this is in the realm of the 5th house of basically love, romance, children, creation, sex, music, art, like the fun stuff, like your hobbies, what you're really into. So that's going to be really good. On the same day, we have the North Node retrogressing into Cancer. And yes, it's going to be the North Node is going to go into Cancer, and the South Node is going to go into Capricorn. We're going to talk more about that too, but I just want to focus more on the North Node at this moment. So as the North Node goes into Cancer, and it goes into your 8th house, the North Node is all about our soul's direction, where we want to go, where we want to focus on. It's what we're hungry for. It's what we want to consume. It's where our appetite is at, and we're always wanting to go towards that role. It's kind of like just what we're hungry for. It's what we want to do. It's like the excitement you get when you go to an amusement park. You're like, I want to ride this roller coaster first, right now. This is what I want to do. So the North Node is going to go into the 8th house, where we're talking about, it's been in our 9th house for a while, of spirituality and exploring and yada, yada, yada. But the 8th house has a lot to do with change. The 8th house has a lot to do with purging. The 8th house has a lot to do with, death, sex, rebirth, transformation. It has to do with other people's money. It has to do with other people's resources and what other people have. And as the North Node goes into this, you're going to want to take more of this role on and want to be more focused on this role or this experience through the lens of Cancer. Cancer is going to be about nurturing and protecting and relating and trusting. And as the North Node goes into the 8th house in Cancer for you guys, you're going to be more called and more compelled to really start to trust the process, trusting other people, really understanding where people are coming from and what people have, and if what people have are bringing good to you or if it's not bringing good to you. So that is a big deal. Moving forward, on November 7th, we do have the new moon in Scorpio. So Jupiter's been in Scorpio. We've had this Venus retrograde in Scorpio. This has been in your 12th house of repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself. This is also to deal with your subconscious. This has to do with hidden enemies. And as Jupiter's been through right here, you've been discovering a lot of yourself that you didn't even know. We've had Venus retrograde right here, where you've been really shifting your value now that things are starting to come out of you a little bit more. And this new moon is just really, it's not really a refreshing new start, but it's just a breath of fresh air. And it's kind of like after you go through a battle, you're not necessarily done yet. You get a break for the night or whatever, and you move on. That's kind of like this new moon in Scorpio. It's kind of like taking it all in. What have you experienced this year? What have you experienced with Venus and Jupiter being there, and being able to have a new understanding of that? The next day, on November 8th, we have Jupiter moving into Sagittarius. Jupiter in Scorpio has been rough. But now that we have Jupiter in our 1st house in our home in his home sign, this is going to be really positive. Jupiter wants to believe. Jupiter wants to give you faith. He wants to bless you with things. He wants to bring abundance and a lot of it. And he's in your first house of yourself, of your personality. He's in his home sign where he gets to do things in the way that he wants to. So this is going to be really good, you know, definitely having a more positive attitude towards things, better things just coming to you and happening to you. Be careful of gaining some weight. It could be really easy to take all that on. But for the most part, Jupiter's in your first house. Like, it's time to be you. It's time to express that. It's time to believe in it. And we'll be talking way more about that as we move on because we have Mercury retrograding and everything else. But that's the overall concept. Then on November 9th, we have Mars trining Venus. This is really good news too because as Venus is still retrograde, she will be in Libra. She'll be in her home sign. She will be in your 11th house of friendships, of groups, of connections and networking. And even though she's still retrograde, she is trining Mars, and Mars is in Aquarius in your 3rd house, where Venus is wanting to bring people together. Venus is wanting to connect you to people and have that. Mars is in your 3rd house of kind of like, hey, stop isolating yourself, stop alienating yourself. How can you really utilize, you know, what you're good at, what you know, that Saturn stuff, and bring people together and really, you know, create something out of it, do something with it. And so this Venus trine Mars thing is going to be really good for kind of bringing people together and kind of doing something, maybe a project that you've had for a minute, and having that kind of start to come together. Then on November 16th, we have Venus actually moving forward and going direct in Libra in your 11th house. Bringing friends together, having a nice time. Venus wants you to be connected to other people and share that relationship with a bigger network, doing something that's a little bit more humanitarian. This is going to be really good because as Venus is retrograde from your 12th house to your 11th house, it's kind of like, ooh, it's a little bit of a process. It was kind of like ugly and dark and dim in the 12th house where we could have had, you know, a hidden enemy or something that just ended up not working out right, and you have to kind of like fall back in order and get everything together in order to make it work. But yeah, Venus is going direct. Great news. The same day, November 6th, we have Mars moving into Pisces, where Mars is now moving into your 4th house. And your 4th house is about your home life, your family life, where you're centering yourself at. And you already have Pisces as the ruler of your 4th house. And so you center yourself just like the way that you portray yourself. It's very Jupiter. It's very much what you believe, what your faith is, what your environment is like, because this is Pisces we're talking about. And as Mars moves into Pisces, this is going to be a big time on really finding a good situation with centering yourself. And, you know, problems could be coming up with your home, with your family, with your parents. But with Mars, Mars is a warrior. Mars is all about action. Mars is all very much about determination. And when you have him in Pisces, he doesn't have any rules to the game. He doesn't have any, you know, a thing to achieve, a thing to go for. So Mars gets to figure out what he wants to go, what he wants to do, what he likes and what he doesn't like in Pisces. And this has a lot to do with, you know, splitting things in a dualistic way, seeing things for a black or white. And as Mars starts to move forward in your 4th house, it's going to be a big time to go, okay, what do you need to be clear about when it comes to centering yourself, and it comes to where you're living, and maybe getting your home situation a little bit more comfortable and getting it a little bit more clear. This is going to be a little bit of, I don't want to say an issue, but it's going to be a very confusing time, and it's going to kind of force you and challenge you to get out of your comfort zone when it comes to repositioning how you center yourself and who you are. Because Jupiter in Sagittarius is bringing a lot to this, and later on Mars will be squaring Jupiter. Before we talk about Mars squaring Jupiter though, November 17th, right after Venus goes direct and Mars moves into Pisces, Mercury goes retrograde. So Mercury's been in your 1st house. He is in detriment there. He is a little bit overwhelmed. He is going fast, but it's like you're, you know, communicating more of yourself, more of your ideas, being some more self-expressive. As Mercury stations retrograde, he's also going to be squaring Neptune exactly. So maybe you're going to have to recenter yourself in your vision and how you really express yourself. Mercury wants to communicate, he wants to speak, he wants to give you a message, but in Sagittarius, it's too fast. It's too much for him at one time. And you're going to kind of start to see, okay, maybe I need to be a little bit more clear where I center myself. Maybe I need to be a little bit more clear and less fogged up with where I do position myself in things, because it can sometimes be very open and ambiguous. However, after Mercury goes retrograde, Mars squares Jupiter. And as Jupiter is in Sagittarius now, where you're feeling better about yourself, more full of yourself a little bit if you're Leo like me, you're just going to be a little bit more confident about going about things, having more self-belief and wanting to explore more of who you are. As Mars is in Pisces and squares Jupiter, it's really going to take a big reshifting of, okay, you know, if this is what you believe about yourself, if this is what you want, you've got to really change the way that you center yourself in those beliefs. It's going to be kind of like, yeah, you can. It's the same thing with like the law of attraction. Like, you can't just think about it all day long. You've got to believe it, and when you change those beliefs about yourself, you're really changing core programs that you have. And that Pisces stuff down there, like, it can be a big, foggy, network, messy area of like, oh, like what your programs look like. And as Mars comes through there, it's like, okay, we have to change this belief about yourself here. We got to change this belief about yourself here. We have to really shift the way that you perceive yourself and where you center that perception. Then, on November 22nd, we have the sun moving into Sagittarius. Hip, hip, hooray. Either it's your birthday or we have the sun in your first house where you're feeling a little, like the light is basically on you. You get to be more self-expressive, more focused on who am I, what am I doing, what's fun, just being more of who you are, really. On that same day, we have the full moon in Gemini. Ooh. So, the moon lights up what we always don't see. The moon has phases. The moon changes. And as this moon, the full moon happens in Gemini, this is going to be in your 7th house. And so this full moon is illuminating the sign Gemini, which is a Mercury-ruled sign. This is all about information, communication, literally speaking, getting facts, getting messages. And as this happens in your 7th house of relationships, of one-on-one relationships, of people, maybe you're going to get word of like, okay, what are you starting to believe about yourself with all this Jupiter stuff? And what are other people telling you? What is the voices of the other people? What are people literally saying to you to really understand more about what your belief is about yourself and where you can kind of take that? And I think it's going to be a very inspiring full moon, because I do believe that a lot of what other people are going to say is going to be more geared towards a positive end, but you just got to really listen. Then not the next day, but November 25th, we have the sun conjuncting Jupiter at 3 degrees Sag. And it will stay conjuncting Jupiter until 4 degrees Sag on the next day. So this is really positive. This is the Sun-Jupiter cycle. This is setting the new tone for Jupiter and Sagittarius. This is exploring yourself, discovering yourself, learning about yourself, and having a good time with it, and really learning about having self-faith and belief. So this is basically just the start of that cycle. Then moving on November 27th, we have the sun going, not the sun going Kazemi, Mercury going Kazemi as it retrogrades and conjuncts the sun. This is when, like we said earlier, when Mercury retrogrades in Sag, you're going to kind of like, okay, I'm feeling a new way about myself, but I need to really understand it, and it's a little bit overwhelming at the moment. And as Mercury goes Kazemi and goes within the sun, this is when Mercury's going to get that, oh, okay, like now I'm starting to see it. Now I'm starting to understand what I believe. Now I'm starting to understand where I need to take myself and what possibilities are out there. It's just about not overwhelming yourself and really being clear about it. Just taking your time and retracing your steps. Then immediately after that, Mercury's going to conjunct Jupiter, where Jupiter's like, hey, this is great. We're so glad that you see things this way now. Let's keep moving on. What can I teach you? What can I show you? How can you learn? And how can we move forward? Then on November 30th, we have Venus's opposition to Uranus at 29 Aries and 29 Libra, where Uranus is in 29 Aries. He's in your 5th house. We're talking about love, romance, creation, kids, music, art, whatever it is that you're into. And we have Venus in Libra in the 11th house of really bringing people together. And this Venus-Uranus may just be like, oh man, you just find yourself at the right place at the right time with the right people doing exactly what you like. It can also look like, oh man, okay, maybe I shouldn't be around this, or maybe I shouldn't be doing that because it's a little bit too much. But you get the point. It's going to be more fun and exciting for us than a lot of the other signs, to be honest. But after that, we have Mercury retrograding back into Scorpio, where Mercury, as he retrogrades in Sagittarius, and you have more of that self-discovery, reevaluating yourself, where you want to take yourself, things like that. He makes his conjunction to the sun, conjunction to Jupiter, and then he'll fall back into Scorpio, where we're talking about the subconscious, we're talking about beliefs, we're talking about repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself. And as Mercury goes back into Scorpio and it dips back, this is when a lot of clarity is going to come through, and it's a lot of raw clarity, a lot of real truth coming out. So expect by the end of this month to have a really big shift in perception of yourself, only to get really real and raw with yourself and really believe in that and really trust that process. And that is your November for 2018, guys. It is going to be awesome. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and I'll be seeing you for next month's horoscope.